For the last several years, probably going on 5 or 6 years, Corie's been making our soap. So today she's going to show us how to make soap, but she's also going to talk a little bit about the reason why she got into making soap in the first place.
Yeah, I started making soap several years ago. There was a class that was being offered near me, and so I thought it would be fun, but mostly because there's so many nasty chemicals in store-bought soap. Lots of store-bought products for that matter. So I just didn't want something that was full of chemicals. I have sensitive skin, and in some ways it can be cheaper to make your own soap. The recipe that I'm going to make will make like 35 bars, and if you average out a couple dollars a bar, just with ingredients you've got in it, it's actually more cost effective. So this is just really a basic recipe I use, and first I should mention this is what's called cold processed soap, which means there's no extra heat added. There will be heat created when the lye heats up, which we can talk about in a minute, but there's also hot processed soap, and a lot of people will make that in crock pots because you have to get it to a certain temperature, but this is just cold processed soap. I still use the same recipe. It's basic, it's easy, the ingredients aren't hard to source, they're not expensive, and it also creates a really good lather. And that really just depends, again, ingredients. I mean, I could go on a long time about that. Different ingredients give you different things. And that's the cool thing about it, is you can go to the grocery store and buy soap that says it's really nourishing, it's really exfoliating, but there's natural ingredients made in nature that will do that too. So, one thing I will say right off the bat is lye. A word about that. You have to be very careful. Sodium hydroxide will hurt you if you're not careful. It's no big deal if you use it right. It's not scary, but you have to know what you're doing. So you always want to have a mask, safety glasses, gloves. I have vinegar on hand. It neutralizes lye. I think there's some speculation about that. I don't think there's actually scientific evidence, but if I ever get lye on me and put this on, it immediately stops itching because it's caustic. It will burn you. That's really important. I'm using, this is just olive oil that I got at the store. It just comes from Walmart, or it's organic. We actually have the coconut oil behind us sitting in the sun to melt. Got it from Walmart. And then this is palm oil. I will say this, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it does say sustainable. There's a lot of palm oil that's harvested that is not sustainable. I wouldn't want to buy that because you'd be kind of taking part in destroying the palm trees, which is not cool. But there's a lot of people who say that that is sustainable. So if you're going to use palm oil, I would make sure it's sustainable. And it's kind of like coconut oil too. Like right now it's hard, but if you heated this up a little in the microwave, it would be easier to come out. And, you know, it's really pretty simple. There's a lot of recipes, and when I first made it, I used a recipe that said you have to get your lye mixture and then your oil mixture to certain temperatures and then mix them. And I had a really hard time with that in the beginning, and we actually would use glass, because we used glass in the class to do the lye mix, and it was fine in the class, but when I did it at home, we cracked like 5 or 6 jars. And so instead, I don't know if you can see it over here right now, it's just the water, but this is a stainless steel. Don't use aluminum. You don't want to use aluminum for this because it can react and it can make your soap not turn out right. You could use plastic, I guess, but it's going to have to be some like seriously industrial strength plastic. Because if you pour lye in it, you'll see it heat up and it'll start to move because it's very caustic. I also have a scale because we're going to have to weigh the lye. We're going to also weigh the coconut oil. But essentially all I'm going to do is put the right amounts of oil into this pot. I'm not heating it. Not going to worry about that. And then I'm going to take lye and add it to the water. And then pretty much just go from there. And then you mix the two together, and then I'm going to take a hand mixer, and then you mix it together in here until it traces, which we can talk about in a minute, and you just put it in molds. There's lots of different ingredients you can use. Like I said, you could do hot process, cold process, and then a word about essential oils and color. So these are essential oils for me. I would never use fragrance oils. You can, but fragrance oils is kind of part of the problem with the store-bought stuff. They're not good for you. You're not supposed to have them, but they're in everything. These come from, I think, TJ Maxx, so they're probably not the really best quality, to be honest, but what you're looking for is that they're therapeutic grade, which means it's not a fragrance oil. It means it's not got nasty stuff in it. And then for colorant, and you don't have to use colorant. If you didn't use colorant with this recipe, it's going to turn out as like a almost cream color with maybe a tiny bit of green, which would come from the olive oil. But this is henna powder, and this is madder. from madder root powder. So both of those very natural, and they will give it a really pretty color. This is going to make it red. This is going to make it green. So one really important thing too is that keep your eating utensils separate from your soap utensils. So after we make soap in this, you do not want to eat out of this. It's had lye in it. It's had even essential oils. You just don't eat out of it. So you need to have separate stuff. This, you know, like this is fine because all that's going to happen is coconut, olive oil. I keep getting my oils mixed up. Sorry guys. We're going to put olive oil in this, and that's it. So that would be fine. You know, this spoon's only going to touch coconut oil, that's fine, but the rest of the stuff that's getting mixed up, keep it separate. So for this recipe, I'm going to use, so we've got to have 32 ounces of water, which I've got over here. We need 15 ounces of lye, which I've got here. And one good place to get soap supplies is Brambleberry. It's online. They are like the queen of soap making. Like Anne Marie is literally kind of called the queen of soap making. So that's where this lye come from. They have really good soap supplies. These molds I don't think come from there. And a word about the molds is you can get wooden molds without the silicone, but then you have to cover them with wax paper. I've done that for years. It's a nightmare, truthfully. If you really want to get into this, go online and get some nice molds that have the silicone, because then all you have to do is pull the silicone liner out when you're done with it and wash it, and it makes it way easier. But you can also use things like that half and half comes in, like those cartons. Make sure it's cleaned out and there's no mold in it or anything like that. But you can use those. When I first made soap, I used random little containers like that. You can only use them once because you're basically going to have to tear it apart to get the soap out. But you can totally do that, and it's kind of fun. What else? So recipe-wise, we got the 32 ounces of water. It's got to be cold. 15 ounces palm oil, and then I'm going to use 48 ounces of olive oil, and then I'm going to use 32 ounces of palm oil, and it's 32 ounces of coconut oil as well. So that's just this recipe. This is going to make like 35 bars depending on how you cut them. It's going to fill both of those up, and then by the time you cut them, you know, it's going to be like, they're going to be like maybe that thick, and it'll make 35 bars. So it makes a decent amount of soap. A word about the recipe. There is so many recipes. You could take this same recipe just with different amounts and make less soap. You could double it and make more soap. Everybody has different recipes based on what they want it to do. Do they want it to be really nourishing? Do they want it to have a really good lather? Do they want it to be exfoliating? So what's funny is that lots of people are like, but lye is drain cleaner, and it totally is. You can pour this down your drain and then put some boiling water on it if you got a drain clog, and it will definitely become unclogged. But what happens is when it mixes with the oils, there's triglycerides, fatty acids in these oils, and when it mixes, it spawnifies, and then it pretty much spawnifies immediately. Once this is traced and it's in the molds, the lye is done doing what it's going to do, basically as soon as it's in the pot. But it still takes like 4 to 6 weeks to cure. At 4 weeks, I think it's done all it's going to do. I don't let it set any more than that. But if I made this soap now, and if I wanted to cut it in the morning, I could, but it would be soft, it would fall apart, you'd put it in your shower, and it would last like 3 days. So it does need to cure for 4 weeks. But it's really interesting because it's really, truly a science. And it's a science, too, about what recipe will give you what you want. Because there's different fatty acid, different triglyceride chains in all these oils that will give you a better lather, a not-so-good lather. Like avocado oil would be super nourishing, whereas, you know, some of the other oils, they'll be alright, but they're not going to be like that super creamy texture. So really, it's really neat. And then of course with essential oils, I mean, they are therapeutic. They're kind of medicinal, of course, in a lot of ways. And so I always like to use lavender. I think that's what we'll use today. That's just really soothing for your skin. It's good for your skin. Smells really good and clean. Not too floral. I like flowers, but you know. First step would be I'm going to just mix all the oils in here. And it is kind of hard sometimes if they're solid, but what's cool about this is exactly 32 ounces, and that's all I need, so it's not going to be hard to just unscrew it and just kind of work with it and get it out. The coconut oil that we have sitting in the sun, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take, you can get any kind of plastic container, and I'm going to set it on the weight, but you want to hit the tar button, which means once that's on, it will be 0, so it don't count this weight. You don't want that weight counted with the coconut oil, and then I'm just going to weigh it and dump it in. And you don't have to worry about getting it to a certain heat. You just don't. I took another soap class after that. First one several years later. and we actually made soap in a priority mail box with a Walmart bag as a liner. And I remember showing up to the class like thinking, I don't know what you're doing, but this is not going to work. And it worked fine. We didn't get it to no certain temperature. We just did the lye mix by itself, did the oil mix, and just put it in. And then the stick blender, I would say, like, if you try to do that by hand, it would take ages and the soap would set up before it would trace. So use some kind of mixer. I think this is called an emulsifier, but it's just the one thing. It's easier. So we'll do that first. So I'm going to pour olive oil in here until this is at 48 ounces. You can sometimes buy them in just 48 ounces. I used to do that, and then it's really easy because you just dump the whole thing in. But this is 51, so it's close, but not exactly. So it may take a second here if it don't go no faster than that. I'll look down and make sure it's at the right place. Yeah, that's pretty much. And there's like literally only barely any left, but so then this one's easy because it's liquid. I just pour it in. And I will say it's handy to have like a silicone spatula. So we had to heat this up in the microwave, else it would have taken forever. So now it's just basically gonna pour out. And that's what you want. It just makes it easier. And then you're more likely to get all of it out. But like, that's fine. We got almost all that, so I'm not worried. Now what we got to do is just lay that back in there. Now we have to measure the coconut oil. So when you do this, the only thing you have to watch out for is you want to, when you cut your scale on, no matter what kind of scale you have, this one just come from Walmart, you want to hit tar, and you also want it to be in the right units. That says grams. That's not right. So there's ounces. So when you put this on there, it weighs. Doesn't weigh much, but it's going to weigh some. So hit tar and send it back to 0 because you don't want the weight of that mixed in. You only want 32 ounces of this. Coconut oil, you can heat it up, but like, you don't have to. It's soft enough to do this with. It may take you longer, but depending on where you live, like if you live in Hawaii or something like that, it's already going to be liquid. Alright, so we got 2 pounds, 32 ounces. So dump that in there, if you got any more. Yep, I got stuff sticking to me there. So that's pretty much it. And it's okay that it's real messy like that. We're not worried about heating it up since this is cold processed soap. You can see it's just a bunch of chunks. Sometimes I will, just stir it like a little like this to get it incorporated, but it don't matter that it's real chunky. Because what's going to happen is when the lye gets poured in here, that's going to heat it up and melt it real fast. Well, the lye bath, I should say. Alright, I'm going to set this aside now, and then we're going to get the lye bath ready. Alright, so this is the part that you have to be careful about. You want gloves. Also notice how I'm wearing long sleeves. I have on pants. I have on closed-toed shoes. Got the glasses. You just want to be careful. You don't want this stuff on you. You don't want to be breathing this stuff in. So you want your glasses down. They will kind of fog, but it's fine because you don't want to hurt yourself. And then you want to try to do this quick. You don't want to leave the cap off like I am. You don't want this to contaminate other stuff. So we want 15 ounces. So we're going to get it on our scale. And then we're going to say tar, so it's 0. And then when I pour it, this is in flakes, which is nice. You can also get it in powder, but when I pour it, I'm just going to go slow. I don't want this sloshing up, getting other places. So, here we go. Alright, we've got 15. That's all we need. We're going to put that aside. Now, if you have any little pieces like that, get them where they go. And then what we'll do is we'll wipe the scale in a minute with the vinegar. When we're done, I'm going to put vinegar on everything. So, when you do this, don't be afraid. Don't pour from up here because you're going to get splashed. You don't want that to happen. Just pour slowly and then we're going to stir, and it's going to get really hot, and you don't want to get burned. Don't splash, don't be scared of it, and you don't want to breathe it in because it's going to sting. So now that you've got it in there, stir carefully. You don't want to splash this on yourself. Stir very careful. There's no rush. This will dissolve. It will get very hot. The reaction's going to occur whether you stir it or not. But you don't want a bunch of chips in it either. You just want to stir until whatever you're using, you can fill the bottom without no chips. And it's pretty much already dissolved. That's how fast it happens, because this will shoot up to like 200 degrees really quick. So what will happen is you'll actually, once it's dissolved, it's going to become kind of clear. You'll be able to see the bottom of whatever it is. So that's always a good sign. And then try to put whatever you use, like put that back in the lye container, because we're going to wash that. We don't want to get lye all over the place, because then what happens is if you touch that and then touch something else, you just don't want to do that. So now, at this point, when you're done with that, I take the mask off. It's probably best to still have on safety glasses and gloves, because it is caustic, but once it kind of does that thing, the dangerous part is over. You still don't want to touch it, but it's not, the dangerous part really is pouring it in. So now what we're going to do, we're going to bring our pot full of oils back over, and then we're going to pour the lye mixture into here. Again, be really careful when you're doing this. Don't splash anything. The proper way to do it is to put it in there and let this set on the bottom and pour this down the blender so you don't get air bubbles. I've never had a problem with that, but that is like the correct way to do it. So, but before we do that, what I like to do is whatever you're going to put in your soap, essential oil wise or colorant wise, I like to go ahead and have that ready, because it's going to come up to trace fairly quick, and you don't want to have to like stop and let it sit there while you're trying to get stuff together. So, we get the gloves off for a second, and then we get to decide, do we want this or do we want that? What you want, Mom? I got Mom here behind the camera. Do you want green, or do you want something that's going to be like earthy red?
It's up to you.
I'm going for the earthy red then.
Okay.
That's my favorite kind of color palette. These are actually for yarn dyes, but it's just powdered herb. It makes no difference. And again, like if I'm going to use colorants and you want it to smell good, I'm not going to use like fake dyes. It's just not good for your skin. The whole point of this is to make it good for you. So I'm not going to put it in just yet. I'm just going to have it ready, but I'm kind of trying to decide the amount that I want to use. It takes, for this amount of soap, it takes a decent amount of colorant or essential oil to get any kind of color. Excuse me, this is half a tablespoon. I'm probably going to put in like 2 tablespoons of this. Is about right. And then for the essential oils, and just getting them out of the box, getting the top screwed off, having them sitting there. And then more than that, for these, they're going to have like little stoppers in them, and you don't want to sit here and do it drop by drop. You can't do that. You don't have that kind of time. So I pull out the rubber stopper to where all you have to do is just dump the bottom. There's clary sage, eucalyptus, and lavender in here, and these are only like 33 ounces a piece. So I'm going to do clary sage and lavender. Those will blend well together. I've done that before.
Not 33 ounces.
0.33 ounces. Y'all, I can't do anything today.
No, you're doing it. You're fine.
Luckily, these stoppers were literally like barely in there. Usually you have to really... Boy, that smells good. Usually you have to really work with them to get them out. Alright, so this goes fast. Once it traces, you have to pour it, so you want to have everything set up. So I've got the bottles there. The tops are off. This is open. I've got that. You could even have a little container with it pre-measured if you want. I've got the molds ready, because when this traces, we've got to take them straight here and pour, and you don't want to waste time. Also, one more thing about that before I do this is these molds are obviously not going to stay down here outside. We're going to carry them upstairs. So then this is kind of where you have to decide to insulate the soap, to not insulate the soap. It's sort of it's really up to your choice. It doesn't matter. I'm going to cover this, but I'm not going to worry about it being insulated too much. And what I mean by that is there's something called gel phase in soap. And gel phase is basically that once you get it into the molds, it heats up more because all that stuff is setting there together. And if it gels, you'll actually be able to see it will look jelly-like. It will look like clear, like gelatinous, all the way through the soap. And if it gets to the gel phase and it gets to the whole thing, it produces the bar is going to be good either way, but it will make the bar a little bit harder. It'll make it look a little better. It will give it a more lustrous look. So if you insulate it, it helps it reach that phase. But kind of one of those things, there is a such thing as insulating it too much. If it gets too hot, you will get something called alien brain. An alien brain is where the top of the soap, it just gets too hot and it has the texture of a brain, which I find to be very disturbing. I don't want that. So I'm going to insulate it a little. I have pieces of cardboard from an old box that I took. It's from a box, and like I cut the lid to where like I can stand them up like that, and then I'm just going to throw towels over them, and that's all I do. And that's enough. You don't have to do more than that. The soap does not have to reach gel phase to be good soap, and it's also okay if it partial gels. For a long time, I went through a phase where I was really worried about that. Partial gel will mean that it gets partially gelled, but it doesn't reach the edges. So if you cut the bar, it almost looks like there's a circle of, not discoloration, but it's a different color. That does not matter. I just make this because it doesn't matter to me. I don't think it matters. I make it because it's fun, because I enjoy it, because it's better for your skin. I'm not worried about all the crazy specifics. You want to do it safe, you want to do it right. Don't worry about the rest. So, enough of that. Now we're going to do this. Keep on your gloves, keep on your safety glasses. I'm not that worried about the mask at this point, but that's just me. I'm going to get this on the bottom. We're going to take this out. And if you're just one person, you don't have to have two people to be doing this. Like, I have to have two hands to pour that. So, we're going to pour it. Be careful. Don't splash it. It will still burn you. And then as soon as we pour it, we have to start mixing. So, get a good hold on this, and here we go. So again, we're being careful. I'm not wanting to drip this on everywhere. I'm going to set it over here. And now we have to start mixing. So you can see it's getting all those clumps of oil, and it's heating them up and it's melting them. So that's why you don't really have to worry about it being at a certain temp. Again, you do not ever want to use this mixer for anything else. This has to be only a soap mixer. You don't want this mixing up your food. Alright, so we are starting to get close to trace. I can feel it. What trace is, I'll show you in a minute, is if I were to pull this out and shake the rest of the soap on top, it will stay on top. It won't just disappear. You can feel it starting to get thick. So see, it don't really stay on the top yet. We're not quite there, but it feels like we're close. You just want lots of motion. You don't want to stay on one place. You don't want to stay only on the bottom. So I just keep it moving. And then right before, like when it's just first starting to trace, is when we're going to add the oil and the color, so that way we have time to get it really mixed in. You can add the oil and the color to a little bit of olive oil and add it in to make sure that there's no clumps, but honestly, I don't worry about it. So we are pretty much about to be at trace, so what I'm going to do is keep going, try not to spill this, and this is going to be poured in. You want to do it, you don't want to do it too soon, but you got to do it before it gets fully traced, because you don't want it to trace too much. Alright, so see what I mean by trace? When I shake that and all that stays on the top, it's almost like when you make meringue and you have the soft peaks at that point. It can be hard being one person trying to get this poured, but it is doable. Take it, be careful, still have your gloves. So I'm just going to do my best to half these as best I can. And then you can stop and kind of even them out and make sure that they're looking alright. and then just keep pouring. Get them as even as we can, but it ain't gotta be perfect. And you'll definitely still have some left in the bottom. And if you can hold it,
I don't have my gloves on.
no, I got it.
Okay.
Maybe. You want to get all of it that you can. You don't want to waste it. Alright, so I'm pretty pleased with that. There's still a little more though. I'll get the rest of that. That's be good enough. So I'm pretty pleased with how that turned out. You see a little bit of the red stuff on the top. That's just powder that got stuck to the walls. That's just aesthetic choice. It doesn't matter if there's clumps in it. It's not going to make your soap bad. The soap's not going to be clumpy. It's purely aesthetic. And then if you wanted, I've done it before, you can just take it with this. You can get a fork, a spoon. See how it's like that on the top? So if you wanted, see that? It's just a design thing. Don't have to do it. It's just sometimes fun to make it like that, because then when you cut it, you'll have texture on the top. Then you could go back and go the other way. It don't matter. I mean, you can draw lines through it, do swirls through it. You can put stuff on the top. You can put color on the top. Lots of people will put sea salt, like, you know, get them in the big crystals on top. That's pretty too. But now we have to take these upstairs. They're going to go in my room. You can just put them in a bedroom. It doesn't matter. On a table, wherever you want to put them. I'm going to lay them on towels in case stuff spills. And then I'm going to take those cardboard boxes, like I said, and they're going to be like a teepee over them. And I'm going to throw little towels over it. And then it's going to heat up and finish what it's doing. I'm just going to put them in the middle. Then I'm going to come over here. And these are just towels. I put them like the teepee so that way the towel's not going to fall in it anyway. And I'm just going to put some towels over it, and it's really that simple. You know, I'm not covering it too much to where it can't breathe. It's just going to let it be a little, and we'll get some more towels for that side. Alright, so the soap is poured and it's setting, but before I say that, I do just want to say I'm not a professional. This is just the way I do it. There's lots of different ways to do it. You can look at your local community college or anywhere like that where there might be classes, and you'll probably find a class. Lots of different ways to do this. The main thing is be careful. You want to be safe with the lye, but there's no exact way to do this. There's lots of different recipes. You can take a basic recipe like this, and it can be fairly affordable, easy. It doesn't have to be super complicated. You can use the recycled molds. You don't have to have fancy equipment, and you can get these stainless steel pots. A lot of the times you can find these at thrift stores. That might even be where this one come from. I don't know. You can also get them from Walmart, but get stainless steel. Don't do aluminum. So the soap is setting in the molds. It's gonna set for 72 hours. Like today's Saturday, so I'll probably cut it Monday. So when you cut it, you can use a knife. Again, if you do use that knife, don't use that on stuff that you eat. But they also make soap cutters. So I have one, and it's actually just made out of like it's probably like the E string on a guitar, and it comes down like this, and it cuts it. And you can get up there. You can find some really expensive, fancy soap cutters. I've seen them before where you put the whole log of soap in, and then all you do is pull this thing, and it's got wires. Those are going to be pretty expensive. You can just cut it with a knife. And then you cut it however you want. However big you want the bars, you can just take it and slice it. It won't be too hard to cut. After that, you want to let it cure. It's got to set for 4 weeks. If you do it any sooner than that, you could technically use it right after you cut it, but it's going to fall apart. It's going to be soft. It will not last long in the shower. It might last like 4 days. Whereas if you let it set for 4 weeks, it's going to last a couple weeks in the shower. When you do it, I usually put like wax paper down, or parchment paper in my room, it can still be kind of sticky, so if you put it on a towel it might kind of stick to it, and it's better if you want them ventilated. That's kind of the trick here, so you don't want them all stacked up on each other. So I've been making soap for years. I just wanted to make it for my family. I wanted it to be something that was healthier, that was better for them, that they could enjoy, that I could put my work into knowing that it was for my family. I know people make soap all over the world, but for me, it does kind of feel like an Appalachian tradition because my great-grandmas made it, and I know that they were thinking of their family when they made it for them, and that's such a keystone of Appalachia. One of the first things I think of when I think of Appalachia is family, and it's a tradition, just using what you got, making things with your hands, and that's what soap does. That it's wonderful. I like to make it for my family, so I hope you enjoyed this video, but mostly I just hope you'll drop back by and help us as we celebrate Appalachia.